Ontario's Minister of Energy and Mines, Stephen Lecce, oversees portfolios the government says will drive economic growth in the province in the years ahead. And he's got some big jobs ahead of him. His office is laying the groundwork to meet what experts say will be a 75% increase in electricity demand by the year 2050. But the plan is not without controversy. For a look at how he's managing those policies and others, we welcome back to the program Stephen Lecce, who's also the PC MPP for King Vaughan. And it's good to see you in that chair again.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Thanks for coming in. All right, let's start simple here. Last week, the government released what it's calling the Integrated Energy Plan, kind of a roadmap for the next 25 years. Right. What's the purpose of the document?
It's the first time in any subnational history to lay out a 25-year roadmap for energy security. We need to add 4.5 cities of Toronto to the grid, 75% by 2050. Massive undertaking. But unlike jurisdictions east and west and south, we have a long-term plan for economic growth and competitiveness. So what does that mean for you, everyday families watching? It means we're going to have affordable power because we're planning ahead with a 25-year horizon. Nuclear expansion, hydroelectric expansion, all the above, transmission expansions, the largest energy conservation program in the history of Canada. These are the foundations by which we unlock one strong Canadian economy. As you know, without power, we don't have economic growth. So this is laying the foundation for our kids and grandkids. And I think that intergenerational lens is something often missing from government, where politicians are seeking short-term electoral wins. We're not going to get a win the next election on this. This is for our kids. This is for our grandkids.
Speaking of missing, I think I looked at all 152 pages of the document and don't think I saw a dollar sign. How much is all this going to cost?
Well, the Independent Electricity Systems Operator estimates, based on the needs for transmission expansions and for generation expansions, it could be upwards of $300 to $400 billion. You are right to note that this is not an insignificant undertaking. It becomes more expensive, more prohibitive. We have reliability challenges if we don't plan ahead. This is the best case scenario because we're starting today with a 25-year horizon. Too often politicians, in my estimation, look to the short-term cycle. The 25-year horizon enables us to grow our economy from critical minerals to manufacturing to obviously to expanding our generation. And the nuclear is the anchor of our economic solution. When we're expanding Darlington, when we're refurbishing Pickering, and we're adding Bruce C, together we're talking about 16,000 additional megawatts of nuclear power. That's like power for 60 million people.
How do you not look at a potential spend of $300 to $400 billion and absolutely not freak out?
It is a lot. The cost of inaction means that number increases. The quantum could increase by 20, 30, 50, 75%. There are jurisdictions around us that are paying massive premiums because they don't have that proactive lens to public policy. They haven't thought about tomorrow. They're scrambling to get power for today, let alone for future growth. We are in an envious position. The Premier really has an ambitious plan for growth. And really, this is part of the nation-building vision that I think many premiers and the Prime Minister at all levels of government are talking about. I mean, nation building fundamentally is setting up the foundations for long-term growth. You need power. We want it to be clean, reliable, and affordable.
Let me pick up on that because the electricity supply mix in the province of Ontario is a really interesting thing. Presumably, the last several governments, which have invested a lot of money to green up the grid, prefer renewables as opposed. Well, we got rid of coal back in 2000 and whatever the heck it was, 2007, or at least that's when the promise was made. I want to, Sheldon, bring this chart up here because it looks like, as we consider in the future, the projected future electricity supply mix, it looks like we're going to be using an increasing amount. Just for those listening on podcast, we got a lot of bar graphs here. The bottom line is we're going to be using a lot more natural gas going forward. And while natural gas is obviously cleaner than coal, it's not as green as renewables or as nuclear or as hydroelectric. So why is there less emphasis on renewables going forward, especially in the mid-2040s?
Well, first of all, what that graph demonstrates to you is that under this integrated energy plan, this long-term plan for growth, we actually get down to 99+% of our grid by year 2050 is non-emitting. Think of what an achievement that is without increasing taxes, a carbon tax or a regulation or a policy that removes options for consumers in the type of cars they're driving, for example. I mean, we achieve net zero
25 years from now.
By year 2050, which is a huge achievement. And between now and then, our grid will become cleaner and greener because the percentage of non-emitting nuclear power and hydropower is increasing. Today, nuclear is 50% of our baseload. We're going to get to 75% under our plan. That's non-emitting power. That is clean energy in addition to the expansion of hydroelectric. Now, you speak about renewables. We've taken a position, unlike the former Liberals, of not just romanticizing one resource at the exclusion of others. I mean, I believe all resources need to compete. We believe in an all-the-above approach. What that fundamentally means is we're not going to be in the business of sole sourcing winners and losers, which the former Liberals did.
But you're using more natural gas than they would have thought it was a good idea to do.
We're using, in this case, the lowest cost option to keep bills down because under the former Liberals, they increased by 400%. I mean, $1,000 more per month.
Because they renewed the grid.
There's no virtue in sending families or fixed income pensioners into energy poverty. Like, honestly, that was the effect of their policy. They may have felt good about it. The impact on the ground for everyday people was spending much more for energy, where it became some of the most expensive hydro rates on the continent. That's obviously not a good thing in the abstract. Now, I agree with you. We want a cleaner, greener grid. We could achieve that by maintaining the option of natural gas within the grid, but over time it's decreased and dwarfed by the amount of non-emitting hydro and nuclear, which this government is heavily investing in. So you can grow your economy and reduce emissions. We already have one of the cleanest grids in the industrialized world. This plan, under our Premier's leadership, gets us to the cleanest, like 99+%, because we're investing in Canadian tech, nuclear, and hydroelectric.
I hear what you're saying, but I know how old you are, and you will be a senior citizen when all that happens. It's a long time to wait, don't you think?
Well, I think it's a sensible plan that gets us to net zero without imposing higher taxes. And I think most Canadians, most Ontarians, want energy to be reliable and abundant. We actually tested this concept of phasing out natural gas as proposed by the federal Liberals. You may recall the clean electricity regulations. The provincial Liberals had an echo of this policy. The IESO objectively analyzed
That's the Independent Electricity System Operator.
Thank you, sir.
Acronym-free zone.
I know. I hate acronyms. The Independent System Operator did an analysis, and they concluded a phase out of this, as proposed by the federal Liberals and provincial Liberals, will lead to system reliability issues, brownouts, blackouts, and increase of prices.
We can't have that, obviously.
Well, no. I mean, look, in the abstract, they may feel good about their position, but the implementation, the impact on the ground is higher rates and reduced reliability. In no sensible government would put that at risk. Natural gas, to be clear, is used as an insurance policy in the province. It's not used for baseload power. It's fired up on the hottest days.
Fire up when you need it.
When we just need that differential, it represents roughly and historically less than 10% of the mix. We are on track for the cleanest, greenest grid in the industrialized world, which is attracting investment to our province. We're proud of that. We're also proud that we're keeping rates low and we're not increasing taxes. I think there's virtue there to make sure energy is affordable when we're dealing with so many economic challenges.
I want to talk about elbows up because your government, I think it's fair to say, got reelected on a promise to protect Ontario from whatever ravages Donald Trump had in mind, and he has a lot in mind.
Yeah.
So as a result, the LCBO took all the American-made booze off our shelves, canceled one of Elon Musk's Starlink contracts. Most of the natural gas, I'm told, for the new and existing power plants for the province is going to be sourced from the United States. Sheldon, chart if you would, because we want to show, and again, for people listening on podcast, this is essentially a chart that shows we're going to be importing from the United States electricity generation sources in a large measure. And I guess I'm wondering what happened to elbows up when we could get some of this stuff, presumably from Western Canada, and not have to buy it from them?
Yeah, I think it's actually a really important question, because when the question is framed for example, in Quebec, do you support displacing Donald Trump's natural gas with the Canadian alternative, or a Quebec-sourced natural gas alternative? 6 in 10 Quebecers say, yes, we're supportive of a pipeline, which you will know, and most of your viewers will know. That is a radical change from when the Energy East policy, when I worked for Prime Minister Harper, where it was totally opposed by Quebec, effectively vetoed. So the world has changed. Economics have changed. Geopolitics have changed.
But you got to put Trump's name in that question, or else you might get a bit of a different response.
It certainly lifts, the response.
It torques it a bit, yeah.
But the truth is, that's who we're up against today. And to your question, the Integrated Energy Plan actually lays out the key principles, the guiding principles for Ontario's strong support for an east to west energy corridor. That includes east to west transmission grid. It includes east to west pipelines. I believe Ontario has always played in Confederation a unifying role. And I think we should not discount very authentic concerns of Western alienation. The West wants a fair deal.
All the more reason to buy electricity generation from them, no?
All the reason to support getting their commodities to Tidewater. I mean, we need a solution to this. We are landlocked. 80% of our resources of our exports are going to one customer who now has a lot of leverage over us. Too much, I would submit, and the Premier would agree. So what it means is we got to build a pipeline east to west. We're offering, obviously, support for that pipeline. One of our foundations and principles is we want to get Canadian steel manufacturers, pipe fitters to build it. We also make clear our interest in a deep sea port in the James Bay to help get our ore or other products, could be liquefied natural gas, to new markets. The vision of energy superpower that governments are speaking about is achieved by ending the landlocking of our resources. And this is a fundamental imperative for our economy and for our national security. I think now more than ever, the federal government is right to push forward on this vision. And I think there is social acceptability out there. We talked about the phrasing of the question, but generally speaking, post-Trump, Canadians want a solution. We want to be energy independent. We want it to be affordable. And yes, I would like to displace American, or even more so, despotic forms of energy. We got Venezuelan petroleum. We've got resources coming from Russia. This just seems nonsensical and offensive. In the energy portfolio, we still do a lot of procurement. And one of the solutions in the integrated energy plan is to phase out and remove the overwhelming dominance of China within the supply chain in energy. 60% of solar, 80% of wind is built in China. So I want to end the financing of regimes and governments that are undermining our way of life indiscriminately.
Does that include the United States?
In the United States, it does actually include a phase out of dependence from the U.S. We're actually giving more points to Canadian business. I would not suggest they're an authoritarian regime. I would submit in this tariff war, we're standing up for Canada by saying we want to buy more Canadian, and we're actually giving incentives in our procurement system to more points if you are a local Canadian supplier.
Then tell me this: how come? And I know the small modular reactors are the new, they're the flavor of the month for nuclear generation now.
Yeah.
And I guess a large chunk of the project is Canadian made, but there is US-based technology from GE and Hitachi, which will go into this. And, this government, again, protect Ontario, elbows up. Why not cancel the American involvement in this and go with Rolls-Royce, which is British, or maybe go with whatever they used to call it CANDU. Now it's something else. What do they call it now?
Yeah, it is CANDU.
Atkins-Realis? Atkins-Realis, yeah.
Well, first of all, there isn't a Canadian alternative of a grid-scale commercial SMR that is this viable.
So we got to go with the American model.
We've got to go with the most efficacious, proven technology. This is the first of its kind in Canada. To suggest this isn't a Canadian value add, I'm not saying you're saying this, but for those that may have this curiosity, the Conference Board of Canada did a study on the net benefits to Canada's economy, $36 billion in net gain. 20,000 Canadian construction jobs, 3,500 permanent jobs will be created here because OPG, first of its kind, we are the first country in the G7 to build an SMR. And unlike the British alternative, like you mentioned, the tech they're providing is going to be in service 4 to 6 years after us. Like our SMR, a small modular reactor, 300 megawatts of dispatchable or stackable power, is going to be connected to the grid in year 2029, 2030. The first in the G7, like we just hosted the G7. It's pretty neat that of all those industrial economies, here in Ontario, we are leading the world and we're exporting it. And we in Ontario own part of the IP when we sell them. Every time we sell them in Poland, like for example, where I was there with Rudy Kozeto a few months ago, the Polish, the Estonians, the Czech Republic, the United States, the largest public utility in America, TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, signed on to build this SMR. We have market penetration because we have a very reputable technology partner.
We have, unless I missed it, I don't know that we've ever done large-scale nuclear construction of power generation that comes in on time or on budget. And this is a very brand new technology.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't sit here and tell me that you know it's going to be on time and on budget by 2029, can you?
Well, I think what we can do is we can ensure discipline and of the schedule and on the budget, because OPG, who is leading this project, to be fair to them, like your assumption is fair writ large, right? Most of these projects haven't been done well on time and budget, but that's not Ontario's, and that's certainly not OPG's historic experience. Look, since I became minister, I had to put our Darlington refurbish this large-scale nuclear reactor, roughly 4,000 megawatts of clean power. an amazing nuclear reactor, Pickering, 2,000 megawatts of power. The Liberals want to close it. I announced the life extension. In both cases, in Darlington, it is being done on time and ahead of schedule.
That is, but I remember the days when
Sure.
Bill Davis's government said, "Oh, it'll only cost $3 billion to do," and the bill came in at $16 billion.
Yeah,
right?
listen, there are lessons learned from the past governments.
I hope
This
so.
government,
You think there are?
well, I think they're being applied, Steve, because in this case, look at the record of every large scale refurbishment of some of the largest reactors on Earth, on time, on budget, and often ahead of schedule. 180 days. When we put Unit 1 at Darlington, roughly 1,000 megawatts of power, 900 megawatts of power, a great example of Canadian leadership in the world. We were the only country amongst the UK, the US, the French, all these large military powers to say we put our refurbishment back online ahead of schedule and under budget. So I hear you. I understand the challenge.
I'm just curious, you know.
No, look, I'm a taxpayer too, but I'm just saying to you, it's pretty incredible that here in Ontario, we can boast with confidence and a wonderful differentiator, a competitive advantage around the world, that we're doing it on time, we're doing it on budget. I'm talking about the large scale. So those lessons will be applied to everything we do. Of course, first of its kind technology always comes with risk and opportunity, but the fact that we're looking at a $36 billion gain, export opportunities, our supply chain, the Canadian Ontario supply chain, $500 million of commitments to build out the SMRs of the world. So we're now at the center of this export. I think that's pretty neat. And I mean, I think that's pretty exciting when it comes to Canada being at the center of the clean energy economy of the future. And many countries are turning back to nuclear, including those that have turned away from it, because it's the only way to create that baseload, reliable, affordable power over the course of, in this case, that's a 65-year asset of continuous power. And so we looked at the alternatives. We actually looked at renewables. We actually put it in the press release, which is a bit of an unusual tactic, Steve, because I wanted people to understand, like the land cost for an SMR is the size, it's a footprint of a community center. It's very small, very modern. They don't look like sort of the Darlingtons, if you will, different tech. You look at a solar alternative or wind. And by the way, again, I'm technologically agnostic. We support those resources too. But we looked at those alternatives because we knew someone would say, but why not choose solar? Of course, made in China solar, you know, the great violator of human rights and environmental labor standards.
Baseload's an issue with that.
And it is an issue because it's intermittent. But when you associate the land and the cost for the technology, and then you need the same size battery effectively. We looked at roughly land the equivalent to the size of the GTHA to get that type of, to your point, reliability. You have to build three times the volume to hit that type of reliable power source. So it's more expensive. The levelized cost is still higher than the first of its kind. So, you know, we are confident, but we are very much committed to keeping that accountable and protecting the taxpayer.
Okay, we got about 5 minutes to go here, and I want to touch on the other part of your portfolio,
Sure.
because you are the energy minister, but you also have responsibility over mines. And one of the things your government has been criticized for lately is this thing, Bill 5, which would allow the government of Ontario essentially to, well, you've read some of the columns about it. There is a lot of concern that there is some running roughshod over people's rights as the attempt to build new infrastructure, nation-building projects, whatever you want to call it, is going forward. I was, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I was surprised to hear during the debates at Queen's Park that all the premiers have been meeting about these. The federal government has been meeting about this because they've got their own C5 that does kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But there was no indigenous representation at any of the tables where this stuff came up, and you want to build on their land. What's going on?
Well, I think, you know, the basis for this legislation, certainly the schedule that I'm responsible for on accelerating mining. I just want to start with the problem we're trying to solve, just a level set. We have one of the slowest permitting regimes in the industrialized world. The OECD said we're the second slowest. In Canada, we are the 10th out of 10th, the last benchmark. This is not a benchmark you want to achieve. We are the worst when it comes to attracting mining investment. Last year, one of the two mines that opened, it took them 16 plus years.
Let me follow up on that, though, right away, because I don't know that you can get these mines open any faster. What is it, 15 years it takes right now? 15,
Can
whatever?
take upwards of that, yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure you're going to get them open any quicker if there are blockades on roads, if there are First Nations that aren't consulted. If they are not made a partner to what you are trying to do.
I
So
agree-
are
I
you cutting
agree.
off your nose to spite your face here?
No, I agree with that premise. My point is simply to say that the impetus behind this introduction of this bill, the first bill was to eliminate interprovincial trade barriers. The second bill was to accelerate responsible resource development. because we're in a critical minerals race. To your point, though, I think actually you have a lot of alignment with our government when it comes to the reality on the ground. We know if we want to do big things, anything really, particularly when it comes to the lands, indigenous lands, treaty lands, et cetera, we have to do it in partnership.
So why isn't that happening?
Well, in the Ministry of Energy and Mines, it is happening. Every transmission project we've approved in this province, we're talking $1 billion projects, indigenous participation, 50-50 equity. Every single battery project and storage project, the 9 of the 11 so far, indigenous participation. In this past budget, to help realize more ownership over those very projects, we added $3 billion for equity for indigenous to buy in.
I did see
The
that,
federal
yes.
government has $5 billion. We're one province, I mean a big province, but $3 billion. I think what it demonstrates is a commitment to ensure economic reconciliation. We have been, and we're going to continue to work with them.
In which case, why are they, I shouldn't say they, there are some indigenous groups that are on side with what you're doing.
Sure.
There are some others that are saying, you know what? Well, you heard Solomon Makwa, the NDP MPP, the other day, I guess it was a week or two ago, saying, you know, it's coming. The blockades are coming, trouble is coming, because you guys are not consulting as you are obliged to do because of a Supreme Court decision.
So
what about it?
So I think the answer to anyone who's inquiring is the government of Ontario, like all governments in this country, constitutionally must discharge the duty to consult. That's not a choice, right? The law doesn't give you the right to override that. This bill that we brought forward does not expedite that. Like that is a moral and a legal duty of government to meaningfully consult.
And you will do that?
Well, yes, and the Supreme Court will require that. But the government, we don't need the court to tell us that.
Okay.
Like intuitively, Steve, we want to do this in partnership. And we want to build together because there's massive opportunity, particularly in the north. It's why we announced $500 million of funding for increasing critical mineral processing. So we end the ripping and shipping of resources.
Okay,
So that
I'm cutting you off here because we're down to our last minute here.
Okay.
You know, the hockey season's over. You don't have to rag the puck so much anymore. But
No,
anyway.
it's an important note, though. We want to
I get you.
process
You're
in
very,
Canada.
You're very enthusiastic about this stuff. I get it. I'm going to ask you the question I asked Peter Bethlen-Falvey, the Minister of Finance, every budget day, which is, I make a 6-figure salary, and so do you, and so does he. And for whatever reason, the province of Ontario is still subsidizing my electricity bill, your electricity bill, his electricity bill, the Premier's electricity bill, to the tune of nearly $7 billion taxpayer dollars a year. Why does that make sense?
Look, the reason why we put forth these energy subsidies in the first place is because hydro rates were so out of control because of really incompetent government of the former Liberals. I mean, they lost the 2018 election in part under Premier Wynne because of irresponsible actions on energy and hydro. They increased the highest 400%. Everyone paid the price. So the government used tax dollars to help reduce the rates, create some stability in the system.
Why not direct it against those who need the help? You don't need the help. I don't need the help.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a public policy question on how to do that, how to really narrowcast those supports. Is it based on the square footage of one home? Because a very wealthy person can live in an apartment downtown. I mean, there's an interesting, we've looked at options. I mean, certainly what I'd say to you is, I get your point. But in the meantime, we're going to keep energy
Bethlen-Falvey
rates.
says the same thing. He says, I get your point, but we're not changing the policy.
Intellectually, we get it. I'm open to you or your viewers' recommendations on how to narrowcast. But what I'd say in the meantime is we want to keep energy rates affordable. That's a strength when it comes to attracting investment and creating 1 million jobs, which we've done under our Premier. And we're going to keep doing that. We're going to keep ensuring energy is affordable, but with a commitment to phase out these subsidies over time.
Really?
Well, I think, as you will see,
I haven't seen that. It's only going up every year that I've seen.
We're trying to bring forth some reduction in that trajectory over time. We certainly want to keep energy affordable.
We shall see. I'm out of time. That's it. That's all.
Steve, thank you for nearly 20 years of good public service. We appreciate you. We're going to miss the agenda.
Well, you'll find something else to watch. It's okay.
I'll move on.
But you know what? We've enjoyed having you on these many years because you always come prepared, and you're very good at what you do. You're very tough to knock off your message. And many of us who watch politics for a living are quite intrigued to see what's going to happen to you in the years ahead. And that's all I'll say about that.
Thank you, sir.
That's Stephen Lecce, Minister of Energy and Mines and the MPP for King Vaughan. Thanks, Minister.
Thank you.